Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, the governor of New York just had a very Joe Biden-esque statement about black people. These Democrats really are the best, aren't they? Insane. So casually racist. The details ahead on that, and you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. David Trone, the congressman, is one of several Democrats who are competing to replace Ben Cardin, also Prince George's County Executive Angela also Brooks. But what is going on with David Trone? What should we know about him as Democrats contemplate making him their nominee to replace Ben Cardin? Andrew Kerr joins us now. He's an investigative reporter for the Washington Free Beacon, and he's got some new reporting on that man today. Andrew, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Vince.
David Trone. Whenever I think of him, usually it's when I'm driving past a Total Wine. I think David Trone owns that, doesn't he?
That's correct. He does.
So tell us, what's the story today on the guy?
Yeah, so David Trone has made a big deal about self-funding his campaign. He's poured a record-breaking $54 million into his primary campaign against Angela also Brooks. No candidate in the history of Senate electoral politics has spent that much of their own money in a primary race before. And all that money is derived from his wealth from Total Wine. Now, Trone is a three-term congressman, and when he won his election in 2018, he said, I'm going to step away. I'm not going to have any operational involvement in Total Wine. I'm going to be a full-time congressman. Well, public records that I found show that's simply not true. He maintains extensive involvement in Total Wine up to this very day. He has the roles of director, president, secretary, treasurer, manager, co-manager, and co-president across 8 Total Wine entities, including the parent company. When I asked him,
I'm just listening as you say this. I just want to I'm thinking back to like the first time when I was younger. I edited a video on my computer, Microsoft Movie Maker, and at the end of it, it would prompt you. It was like, hey, who was the director? Who was the producer? Who was the cinematographer? And you just put your own name over and over and over again. Vince Coglianese. Except I wasn't managing a $2.4 billion booze empire, which David Trone. So Trone had actually claimed, I'm not going to be involved in managing the business, yet the business claims he's the only guy involved in it?
Right. So his campaign told me on April 26th, quote, Congressman Trone resigned as CEO of Total Wine in 2015, and he relinquished all operational responsibility when he became a member of Congress in early 2019. This is simply not true. And so when I responded, I said, hey, is he going to resign from all these roles that he disclosed in his financial disclosures? And their answer was, quote, we will not be providing a response from our campaign to these questions. Now, how is this manifested with David Trone, holding these ownership or leadership positions with Total Wine during his service in Congress? Well, in 2021, for example, he filled out a signed and notarized application for a new Total Wine store in Arizona. He identified himself as the controlling person of the entity. His employer he listed as the, quote, U.S. government, his occupation, quote, congressman, and his place of business as the Longworth House office building. And he had it signed and notarized as, and this that new location presumably could not have opened if he had not filled out that questionnaire.
So part of the, so this was in Arizona, you said?
Yeah, and it's just an example of how he's been personally involved, and as Total Wine has expanded his business, during his congressional service. Well, David Trone's name just pops up over and over again.
It's interesting.
He's signing documents. Yeah.
What you just said, though, that he used his title as a member of Congress in order to score a favorable judgment for his company, which was enriching him. The reason you write that on your application and get it notarized, and you really want to emphasize this is a member of Congress who's making this application, is because you don't want to be denied. You're trying to use your power within the government as an implicit threat when you make the application. And so he's enriching himself. It's kind of fascinating. So he actually wrote down that his job, his occupation is member of Congress as he was applying for a business license in Arizona.
Correct. Yeah.
How about it? So, I don't begrudge the guy for building and having a successful business, especially, people like Total Wine. That's perfectly fine. But when you lay out there, as you've discovered, Andrew Kerr, that he says, I'm not going to be involved in operating the business at all anymore, and then you find all this paperwork that shows actually he's extensively involved. Well, what else are we to conclude but that you lied?
Right. And this is a guy that not 3 weeks ago, on April 23rd, he put out a video on his Twitter account touting his people over politics plan. And he's, giving this speech about how, we need to require politicians to put all their assets behind a blind trust. It's farcical. You're the president, secretary, treasurer, co-manager, co-president of Total Wine right now. You've received as much as $263 million in distributions from his holdings in Total Wine since he's been in Congress. And spoiler, they're not in a blind trust. He's still running the company as he's in Congress. He's taking in an obscene amount of money from this business, and now he's using that to finance his Senate campaign. And if it weren't for David Trone financing his own Senate campaign, the guy has no other donors. He seems to be the only person actually invested in him becoming senator. So, and when he gets any sort of scrutiny from a reporter such as myself, he just walks up and says, we're not going to be answering any of your questions about his continued involvement in Total Wine.
Well, that's because they're embarrassed by what the answers are. So, again, I don't begrudge any member of Congress. In fact, I actually think that being a member of Congress shouldn't be a full-time job. You should be able to maintain a real job and then have to do that occasionally. But regardless, you can have a business. But once you make commitments to the public and the voters specifically that, I'm not going to be involved in managing this thing, well, then you better stick to it, or else somebody like Andrew Kerr is going to crawl through your records and discover actually you're very involved. So your impression that Andrew Kerr is this is not going to change, even though you have detected it and pointed it out to the campaign. They're just going to go full steam ahead, and they're insisting that he's not involved in managing the company.
That's the statement that they gave to me, which just totally contradicts what he's reporting in his financial disclosures and what all the public records show. He's still he's the licensee for their location in Towson, Maryland. And he's on the business license right now for that store. So yeah, I think it's a legitimate question for Maryland voters to ask as they go to the polls. And the primary election is next Tuesday. Is whether they want a U.S. senator serving them that it seems to have split interests. He's still involved in this business empire, this family business empire of his, and he doesn't seem all that interested in clarifying whether or not he's actually going to fully step away from it or not.
There are members of Congress who become filthy rich while they're in Congress, and they don't usually do it so brazenly. His application in Arizona, I can't get over this. To have Total Wine in Arizona, his place of business he listed as Longworth House office building. It's just so completely brazen.
It is.
Unbelievable. Okay, so my guess is you're going to keep digging in on the saga.
Yeah, his pitch to voters is that he should be a U.S. senator because he has the ability to self-finance his campaign. So there was a primary debate a few weeks ago, and he said, quote, "I'm the largest donor to Democrats in the past 3 cycles. I drive our Democratic Party, not only in the House, but also in the Senate. That's why I'm so effective. I've got all those connections in the Senate." So I think that this Total Wine question with David Trone is going to be a very big issue in the campaign. If he wins his primary, which the polls suggest that he's got quite a sizable lead over also Brooks. She still has it's not a insurmountable lead. But I think if he makes it to the general election, it's going to be a big issue because he has placed his wealth and his business success as the reason why he should be in the Senate. But he's not interested at all in actually answering questions about the source of that wealth and his what appears to be his continued involvement in this company.
Just imagine the business permits he's going to be able to get to sail through once he's a U.S. senator. It's going to be so great for him. Thank you very much, Andrew Kerr and the excellent Washington Free Beacon. Thank you for your coverage and your time today, sir.
Thanks, Vince.
Always good to talk to you. Let's go to the phones. I've got Keith calling in from the Peach State, Georgia, on line 1. Hello, Keith. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, how you doing, Vince? Yeah, I'm a Vienna native. I'm just doing some traveling, and I listen to you on the internet.
Thank you.
Every chance I get. I don't know how long ago it was. You had a guest on. It might have been actually Andrew Kerr himself. I don't know. And the skinny on Mr. Trone, as was voiced by one of your guests, was that he was a notorious no-show at his office, and I think now we know why.
He was busy operating his business and not seeing to the business of the American people. That's what it sounds like.
That's a pretty good inference.
Yeah, I would think so. Well, you led me right there. I just had to go for it. Yeah, no, this is a kind of fascinating. Look, as I said, even as we were planning this segment out, I was like, well, wait a second. It's his business, right? He's allowed to have a business. It's an understandable business for a guy like me. You buy a bunch of wine and you sell it. That's the whole business, and they try and beat everybody else's prices. Got it. But if you make a commitment to voters that you're not going to be managing that business, and then it turns out that your name is on every single document that business is putting out there on an annual basis, you're lying to us, aren't you, Keith?
Absolutely. You put it pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Keith, thank you very much for listening to us, even from afar on the internet. Appreciate that. And if you, like Keith, occasionally travel out of our area, WMAL.com. I get this question all the time. It's almost like it's not actually that difficult to hear the show. It's WMAL.com or the WMAL app, or just find a smart speaker and talk to it and say, play WMAL. Does it get simpler than that? It's very straightforward. But you get quite like, all right, show me on the map how I get. No, it's very simple. Don't overcomplicate this, you complicator. Yeah. Once again, Larry, the right question. In fact, breaking news on that subject. Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida has just indefinitely postponed the classified documents trial. Instead, according to Julie Kelly, we had her on the program at the top of the show. Actually, at 4 o'clock, she was on with us. According to Julie Kelly, Cannon is now setting a number of hearings to examine Jack Smith's conduct here. Cannon has now set hearings on key motions, including selective prosecution, unlawful appointment of a special counsel, and what Julie Kelly says Jack Smith really hoped to avoid, a hearing on the scope of the prosecution team, including the Biden White House. Almost an extended mini trial of Jack Smith, says Julie Kelly. The Trump portion of this trial, that's delayed indefinitely, at least for the moment, which means we don't have a specific date. We could get one in the future. Things are going haywire in the document dispute between the Biden administration and Donald Trump, and in other words, bad news for Biden today and Jack Smith. We'll get back to the more details as we learn them. That's breaking news. Anita calling in from Warrenton now on line 1. Anita, good afternoon to you. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
For taking my call. Hey, every time I hear these news articles on the matter involving Miss Daniels and Donald Trump up there in New York City, she's described as a porn star. Now, I don't follow the porn industry, but does she have to have made a movie that earned so much money to get that title, or has she had to do so many jobs to get that title? I mean, who decided she's a porn star?
I get the impression, Anita, and I may be wrong about this, but I get the impression that once you disrobe and sell your body on camera, I think that's all it takes to qualify for that title. I don't think there's really much more to it than that. And it's also crazy to me that people use it just reflexively. Porn star. I'm with you, Anita, which is why I don't use it. An old friend of mine many years ago, he's so far ahead of his time, he started saying, these are not porn stars, they're video prostitutes. In other words, you're selling your body. Prostitution is selling your body. Just selling sex. You're just doing it on camera. So you're a video prostitute. That's the language that he's used, and I stole it from him. I said that's a perfectly descriptive term. And nowadays the left doesn't want to use the word prostitute. They hate that term. They say, oh, sex worker. They say, well, it's prostitution. It's the oldest profession, right? Prostitution. And Here you go. So you're right. That is weird, isn't it? Like you read all this news coverage, you hear it, and there's a porn star, and you're like, according to whom? Who came up with that, Anita?
Yep. Well, you guys need to start referring to her accurately as a sex worker or a video prostitute.
Well, that's what I'm doing, baby. That's every day. Every day. Thank you, Anita. Yeah, that's my obligation. My obligation to you is to tell the truth in the most understandable possible way. Video prostitute. Yeah, video hooker might be a little much. Video prostitute is the way we describe it here. You know, it was interesting, hilarious, actually. In her testimony today, she claimed that she was very rattled by the experience. The one that she alleged that she had with Trump. She's very rattled that she slept with him. You were rattled? But Anita just described why that's ridiculous in so many words. You had an entire career. I don't know. How many men did you profit off of doing the hanky-panky with on camera? You were rattled by a sexual encounter? Come on. Like, will you please? She was also asked today by the defense team, did you rehearse your testimony? She's like, no, I didn't. Well, then why did you previously say you engaged in grueling mock trial sessions ahead of this? And then she started spinning. Well, it was, hard. So you did rehearse your testimony. I don't know. How does a jury walk away from this and go, yeah, Trump's guilty? I guess that's why they're doing it in New York. They think they have a jury like that. Stay with us. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. To reiterate some of the big news of this hour, Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida has now indefinitely postponed the Trump classified documents case brought by the Biden administration by way of Jack Smith, as there are a bunch of pretrial issues to resolve, including the fact that Jack Smith and company just admitted in court filings that they have been mishandling the evidence from Mar-a-Lago and had misrepresented to the court that the evidence was all exactly how they found it. It's not. It's all jumbled up. And also, they for the first time revealed that they brought those classified cover sheets with them to Mar-a-Lago, put them on top of at least on the ground, but on top of some kind of documents, spread them out across the floor. Those photos of documents those documents at the top, at least, were not in Trump's custody. They were brought by the FBI and then planted there and then photographed. It's just led to a whole bunch of chaos over the weekend. And now Judge Cannon officially vacating that May 20th trial date. It's indefinitely postponed. So at some point, it could come back. If Trump wins this election, my guess is not so much. Not so much. So there is that. Let's also get to Kathy Hochul today, the illustrious governor of New York. She is, well, I'll just let her do this in her own words. Kathy Hochul this week participating in a forum talking about young black kids in the Bronx and how they're too stupid to know what computers are.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world to open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
Holy cow. Now, that reminds me of Bidenism. You remember this one from a couple years back where he's talking to a group of what Time magazine described at the time as mostly Asian and Hispanic voters Wednesday. And here's what he had to say at the time.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Oh, my goodness. That's Biden, just revealing the casual racism of the left. Kathy Hochul saying young black kids growing up in the Bronx, they don't even know what the word computer is. Yes, they do. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, at least today. You know what a computer is? Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, who happens to be a black man for the purposes of this segment, said this about Kathy Hochul today when he was asked about her idiotic statement.
Listen, I am not the word police. I know the governor's heart. And, you know, when you make thousands of speeches, when you're in front of the cameras all the time, when you're trying to be authentic and say the things that you're really feeling, one can sit back and do a critical analysis of every sentence you say and say, you know, oh, you didn't say it this way, that way. I know her heart. I know what she was intended to say.
Okay, but hold up. I'm a big believer that you should have some grace for people, that you can't assume the worst all the time about them. I totally believe that. But she said that black kids in the Bronx have no idea what a computer is. She acted as if they're growing up in some off-the-grid, remote region of some country that hasn't even been discovered by civilization yet. They have no idea what a computer is. We have to teach them about fire. No, she said they had no idea. Eric Adams was like, look, they give a lot of speeches. We all give speeches. We mess up from time to time.
Oh, you didn't say it this way, that way. I know her heart. I know what she was intended to say. And she was not trying to be disrespectful to the people of the Bronx. And I thank her for what she's doing and how she's highlighting, you know, the issues of technology.
What issue?
We need to have it throughout our entire city, and she has been a real partner. And so those who want to be the word police in this business, you go right ahead. The people of the Bronx knew where her heart was.
You know, it's fun. The left is kind of the word police. The left's like constantly, that's a microaggression. I just said boys can't play girl sports. That's a microaggression. Bigot. Yeah, all right. So that's Kathy Hochul. Now, let's play the game of what if she were a Republican? What would the news cycle look like right now? You wouldn't be able to escape it. It'd be like Kristi Noem shooting her dog. You wouldn't be able to escape it. It's everywhere. Although, presumably, she would stop giving interviews, unlike Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem just keeps doing the interviews. And everyone keeps asking her, like, why'd you shoot that dog? That's awful. Did you really meet Kim Jong-un? Why'd you claim you did that? And she just keeps giving interviews. Why is she doing that? Why does she keep doing what kind of advice is she getting? Even Stuart Varney, good old British-speaking Stuart Varney, was like, hey, what's going on with this story? Why do you keep telling this?
Still think that you are in line to be Trump's vice president?
No, it's up to Donald Trump. He's the only person who will decide this. He's the only person who will decide. And I do speak to him.
May I ask what he said to you about being vice president?
No, I never tell anybody my personal conversations with
Did the dog story
President
come up
Trump.
in a conversation with
I talk to President Trump all the time.
About the dog?
About a lot of things.
And by the way, Trump loves dog analogies. Remember, you know, didn't he say the Baghdadi or whoever we killed? It was Baghdadi, I think, but they got the dogs on him. He died like a dog. He died like a dog.
And right now, I tell you what, he is being persecuted in a political witch hunt in this court case. So I'm proud of him about how tough he is and how well he is doing.
Did you bring up the dog?
Yes, enough, Stuart.
Did you
this
bring
interview
up the dog
is ridiculous, what you were doing right now. So you need to stop. It is.
Okay.
It is.
We'll
Let's
stop.
talk about some real topics that Americans care about.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh, well, of course we are.
We do thank you for being with us.
Right.
I know I pressed hard, but that's what people are talking about to this day.
Yeah.
Governor Noem, thanks for joining us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
You bet.
We'll be back in just a moment with the opening bell.
Oh, man, you could possibly, freeze water on that set. They got very cold very quickly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Another version of this happened on Newsmax today. Rob Finnerty this morning had Kristi Noem on Newsmax, and here's how that went.
But going back to what you said a moment ago, maybe not lying to the American people. And I think this is important to talk about because the book's called No Going Back, the truth on what's wrong with politics. And I think part of the problem with politics today is that politicians aren't honest with the American people. So if you asked me a month ago, who's at the top of the list to run with Donald Trump, I would have said your name. If you asked me that same question this morning, I don't even think you're on the list.
Really?
So my question for
why
you,
is that?
yes, really, and it's because of things that have come out in this book, like your claims that you met Kim Jong-un, and then over the last week,
I've been to the DMZ. I've been to the area. What I've said
did you stare
is
down Kim Jong-un? Governor, 1 second. I will give you an opportunity to respond. I just want to get this out there. So here's the quote from the book. You say that, I remember when I met North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. Governor, that never happened, did it?
What I have said in the book is that when I became aware of the content, that we had it changed. And that's the way that
that old rigmarole. You know something? I saw our friend Amber Athey was tweeting about this today, and she said this was I think it was today or maybe yesterday, but she was pointing out that this is kind of par for the course for Kristi Noem. So when she gets caught with her hand in the cookie jar, she doubles down in a senseless way. This happened a couple years back. Remember, the legislature in South Dakota had presented a bill banning boys from girls' sports, and she vetoed it. She vetoed it, and she claimed at the time she was just trying to protect the state from lawsuits. We're going to get lawsuits. Yeah. And what was really happening was behind the scenes, there were all sorts of moneyed interests who were trying to keep her from banning boys and girls sports. That's what happened. But then she started getting angry at everybody. She's like, I'm a big defender of keeping boys out of girls sports. And okay, why'd you veto the bill then? Oh, we're going to get sued. And so a bunch of other Republican-led states went first. And then eventually, under political pressure, she was browbeaten to submission. She signed a bill into law that banned boys from girls sports. So this is kind of the same, this is, as Amber points out, it's kind of the same tact. She gets caught in something she shouldn't be doing, which is like, don't make up a story about me and Kim Jong-un. And then she just keeps doubling down and coming up with sort of, I think Amber pointed out, it was like gaslighting non sequiturs or something, just like, once I found out about it, we had it removed from the book. That doesn't make any sense. It's your book. It's a biographical book. You claimed you met Kim Jong-un. Why was that in there? So anyway, she keeps just making trouble for herself. And this is easily resolvable. Stop doing interviews. Just stop it. You screwed the pooch on this one, so to speak. Mike, Gainesville, line 2. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince.
Hey, sir.
You know, it's a little hard to stop talking about shooting the dog when every time you do an interview, they want to ask you about shooting the dog. It's a little like the election denial question that all these Republicans get put to when they're on CNN or MSNBC. The first question is always, do you still deny the election was rigged?
Yeah, but at least in that construction, it's like there are identifiable lies built into the way the question was asked. But here you've got Kristi Noem. She wrote it in her damn book, Mike, and then she just keeps doing interviews. The answer to this is stop doing them. Sorry, you whiffed on this one. Maybe the next book. Maybe that'll work.
All right.
Mike, thank you. Mike, standing up for Kristi Noem. He's being a gentleman, but I'm just telling you, the whole thing is like ridiculous. There is that. Also ridiculous, the Boy Scouts of America. Do you remember them? Do you remember how we used to have Boy Scouts and kids that were proud to be Boy Scouts? They'd work their way up from Cub Scout to Eagle Scout. They'd do the whole path, and pretty impressive, actually. You show up on your resume. Instead of raising a Palestinian flag at Columbia, you became an Eagle Scout, and you actually did something good for your community and not just some selfish act of destruction, which is what's happening on these campuses right now. Well, over the years, these scouting organizations have become less and less identifiably noble. The Girl Scouts long ago, unfortunately. The Girl Scouts has become, big pro-abortion, pro-media matters, psychotic left-wing organization that's unfortunately done a lot of damage to girls, unfortunately. And a lot of parents have said, my kid's not going to do that. Not with the Girl Scouts anymore. And the Boy Scouts, a couple years back, they started letting girls in. And they were there was some dispute. The Girl Scouts were angry that they were trying to let girls in. And how dare you? That's our territory. We're supposed to have the girls in our thing. And now, and of course, the Boy Scouts were subjected to a number of scandals as well, involving not adequately caring for the boys in their custody, including abuse scandals. And so that leads us to today, where the Boy Scouts of America, they have a CEO called Roger Crone, has announced that they're changing the name of Boy Scouts of America to just Scouting America. They're getting rid of the whole concept. Now, look, what are the Boy Scouts for? At its core, it's for giving boys an experience with the natural world, going out, learning some self-determination, some independence, some survival skills, the kinds of things you want boys to learn: how to build a fire, how to build a fort, how to survive, how to build anything, how to do something, how to get outside into the natural world. And now they're wandering. This is why, words are so important. We had someone call in earlier talking about, how can you call Stormy Daniels a porn star? What is it with the language? What is it with this? Why are we lying about everything? Yeah, well, why do we manipulate the language around the Boy Scouts? Listen to this. Roger Crone explaining why they're getting rid of the name Boy Scouts.
Sends this really
and as you listen to this, you're going to instantly recognize the DEI just pouring through it.
Sends this really strong message to everyone in America that they can come to this program, they can bring their authentic self, they can be who they are, right, and they will be welcomed here. The argument that I make with the people that say, well, I always like...
You can be your authentic self. What does that even mean? Why was Boy Scouts offensive? How did the name Boy Scouts preclude a young man, a boy, from being his, quote, authentic self? How was that name a barrier for boys to succeed?
Right, and they will be welcomed here. The argument that I make with the people that say, well, I always like Boy Scouts of America or BSA, why do we have to change? Go, membership is at historic lows, right? Part of my job is to...
Well, the answer is not to diminish the mission even more. So if you have a business and nobody really knows what the purpose of your product is, why would they buy it? Why would you water down the brand even further? The reason your membership is declining is because people don't even know what you stand for. And now your declaration is, we're going to make it even more confusing.
Membership is at historic lows, right? Part of my job is to reduce all the barriers I possibly can for people to accept us as an organization and to join.
Man, that word boy really puts a damper on the membership. Boy Scouts? That's offensive. Let's get rid of that. If we get rid of that, maybe people will join our nondescript organization. What do you represent? Everything. We represent literally everything and anything and whatever you want, and you can be your authentic self. That's insane. Michael calling in from Woodbridge, line 2. Michael, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Yeah, Vince, I had to take you to task on this thing. This name change, it's corporate changing the name, okay? Yeah. It is not the local troops. The troops are self-directed local entities who are essentially franchises of the corporation. You get out of it what you put into it. My troop is still high octane. We just literally had an Eagle graduate 2 weeks ago. We had an Eagle from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, all there to support a 2024 Eagle.
I love that.
You get out what you put in.
So have you ever contemplated just getting out of the Boy Scouts of America or whatever they call themselves and just establishing the troop under some other organization? Because they're getting rid of the boy thing.
You lose a magnitude of opportunities. You lose the summer camps. You lose the adventure cruise. You lose the ability to learn scuba diving on the Keys. You lose abilities just over that one word.
So you think
special needs students?
Amen. I understand that. So they're doing you a disservice then. In other words, Michael, they're wrecking the language around this and they're liberalizing it when they should be embracing what it means to turn boys into young men.
Bear in mind, I was never a fan of Wayne LaPierre at NRA either, but I still supported NRA.
Yeah, well, look, you have every right. If you support, like the NRA, for instance, and they're mismanaging the money that you've been donating to them, you have every right to be angry at them and demand better from them. And I'm saying the same thing about the Boy Scouts.
How do we change that going forward? We change that with involvement, with parents more involved, not less involved.
Yeah, and speaking up.
We need bodies to make this happen.
Amen. Well, yeah, and speaking up when these stupid organizations say, oh, we don't have to refer to boys anymore. You morons, the entire organization is about boys. Or it should have been. Anyway, Michael, thank you. I respect Michael's call. Appreciate that. He's right. A lot of local organizations doing good work. I'm not begrudging any of that. I'm angry at the national organizations who are screwing them over. Happens all the time. Ask the union guys. Hey, you know what's happening next? You do. The great one, Mark Levin, up next right here on WMAL.